Welcome to What Do You Want to Do, the show that will hopefully help you figure out what you want to do in life or reconnect you to what you love doing. Each show has a guest who is doing what they want to do, whether it's in their career or in addition to their regular job. Most importantly, we want to help you realize that no matter your age, you too can do what you want to do if you have the will to do it. Now here's your host, Leonard Kaplan.
Welcome to another episode of What Do You Want to Do? I'm Leonard Kaplan, and as usual, we have a guest with us here in the studio, which is not really a studio, and this is not even a backdrop. This is my fake, actually, that is my basement, but it's on the other side of the wall. But it's my virtual background here on What Do You Want to Do? This week, I change them up every week. My guest today is Quintin Huckaby. Thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Now, I notice your green background. Is that in honor of the Green Lantern or the Green Arrow?
No, nothing really that nerdy at all. Actually, it's a color I picked for my YouTube, my gaming YouTube channel. So it's kind of developed into a thing, as you can see. Never thought I would own so much green lights, but I mean, branding, right? Isn't that?
It's true. That's one way of doing it. That's great.
Color is so important when it comes to everything. So, yeah, I kind of like it.
I like it too.
There's 30 things I probably would fix if I had the time, but I like it.
I will not argue with your eye because you are a cinematographer. You are I would venture to say, a videographer. You do everything visual. You work along with directors. I met you on a project that we were working on for a web series proposal, and I was amazed at what you did with light in particular. It was
thank you.
Amazing with very little equipment that you had at the time that we had. We didn't really have a budget there on that project.
No, we did not. Just whatever I had lying around. But I mean, yeah, dude, you gotta use with what you got. So, but if you perfect with what you have, I mean, then think about what else you can do with something else.
It's amazing. I always go back to the saying: the smaller the palette, the greater the creativity. And
it forces you. It does. It forces you to develop a creative, almost not necessarily creative narrative, but your own creative style. As long as you push yourself. If you don't push yourself in that area, you won't develop. Like you have to take a hold of those reins. But yeah, don't ever let what you have or where you're at stop you from a dream or anything, because I mean, just a piece of paper with light, you can do a lot if you just think about it, have fun with it,
especially when you know what you're doing. Now, where did you get your training? I was curious about that.
Well, that's the weird thing is I never went to school, which honestly is so funny because you talk to people that go to school and they're like, I don't need to go to school. And then you talk to me and I kind of wish I did for a lot of reasons. But I never thought that I would want to get into any of this until a friend of mine threw a camera at me and like, hey, videotape us. We're just going to have fun. So, and literally just like this little $50 little camera, started the whole like, oh, what else I could do type thing. And then I find myself at the local studio with a director, cinematographer, Danny Rogers. And I just stood by, talked to him, and just absorbed as much as I could, because that's the only way that I was going to be able to learn anything, is by looking at people around me and try to figure out and ask questions and stuff. And yeah, just hurry up and wait, just like everything else, in the industry. You just hurry up, learn as much as you can, and then just wait until you can use it and test it out. And yeah, he was very pivotal in my kind of how I do things. And then just from there, YouTube videos, watching movies, just trying to dissect things as much as I can, and conversations. You're I used to say, oh, I taught a lot of myself, but really, I had to bounce and be sharpened and in ways that I never thought I did until, like, you get older and you start, recognizing the people that actually really sharpened you and you made you more who you are. And yeah, it I just kept on going, like a passion. Because even if you go to college, which college is great for community networking and that whole rubbing off of other people and learning and stuff. But you got to still have that passion to keep on learning after college, because they're going to give you techniques. But I mean, you got to take those techniques and transform them into your own, art, you know.
You feel like you're missing something. It sounds like a little bit. Can I make that assumption, Quint?
Yeah, I feel to be. I mean, honestly, like I do. I feel like, yeah, the things that I think of are what I'm missing is, um, certain type of equipment, because equipment's really important in film. It's a major role in the development of equipment, and just the in-depth stuff that has to do with anything that you touch is knowledge. And if you don't have that opportunity to touch this type of camera, I mean, not to get too specific, like understanding, that you can change black levels, kind of
Right.
crush your image in a different way. If you don't have a camera that does that, you don't have that tool. And then you go to a job or something and it's like, hey, why don't you do this? It's like, well, what is that? And then you kind of look like the guy that, do you really know what you're doing? But
That can happen. I think that can happen with the best of us. Uh, let's delve into what a cinematographer does. What are all the duties that a cinematographer does? Because this podcast is twofold. It's for a general audience, and I may show it to my students in my media
mm,
technology class.
well, the funny thing is, what I've learned is you'll have this generalization what a cinematographer does, and they're in charge of making the camera, cameras, angles, lighting. They kind of have that whole, area of making sure things are technically sound. They talk to the director. It's a creative technical position, and that's very important, because the director is not going to know technicalities of lighting and softening and depth of field and different types of lenses and all this, technical stuff. But at the same time, if a director comes to you, I want to feel sad, or I want to feel this way in the shot. Well, your job is to do that. Or like, kind of an older thing, I don't know how much they use it nowadays, but like a lot of the times, if you wanted a guy look tough, you'd use really harsh lighting, because it's just, sharpness and toughness, and but a lot of people don't think of that things. It's very technical job. And I really enjoy the technicality of it. Um, and then and it's also creative. It's in a creative space. So you get to work with other people to build the story. And that's really what for cinematography specifically, it really is using your technical skills of how a camera works and how the lighting and the set and everything is, and then making this and creating this story. And I always talk about story more than anything else, because you can know a bunch of different technical things, but if you don't get together with your director and really work on the story and emphasizing, your skills and turning it into, stories, especially since cinematography specifically works with a bigger crowd. You have a bunch of people around you that are doing other things, and you get to focus in your little world of, the camera, and what the camera is going to see. But kind of stepping aside from cinematography, because videography is right close to it, and a lot of people don't know the difference of that either. And videography is literally just a smaller group of people doing the same thing, and a videographer is going to have a lot more, they're going to be more involved in lighting. They're going to be more involved and they're going to be setting up lights pretty much. You're going to be doing like me. I do everything. I'll set up
Mhm.
lights, I'll set up sets, I'll set up whatever needs to be done. I'm a prop guy sometimes too, if no one knows what they're you know especially in small groups. But even now, going back to cinematography, even in a cinematographer space, you know that role is normally can be warped and changed depending on who's around you too, because different groups, maybe in Hollywood and some of the bigger stuff, they have more defined roles and whatever. But kind of smaller budget films that are still big enough to have specific roles, you still, depending on the people around you, still might be doing something slightly different than the last group. So you can define it technically, but I mean, it depends on who's around you, and that's kind of the crazy part about it. Is the especially with cinematography, is there's a bunch of people that just create that space. You might have a foot in a certain area, but you all get to create this art, and each group is going to be different. So
Speaking of groups, the group of people that we worked together in Springfield, Missouri was amazing. Uh,
yes.
Jason and his brother Mike and Brittany and Madison Strain and yourself.
Mhm.
You guys not only are really expert at what you do, but you're very, all of you are nice people. I keep in touch with 90% of you. And that doesn't happen very often. How did that happen, I
Well,
wonder?
I mean, like I said, it's kind of a group thing. Like, you find people you like and you stay with them,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily, oh, I like them, or the next day they do something stupid and you don't like them anymore. No, you grow with them, you invest time in people around you. And especially with Jason, he took a chance on me. He took a chance to spend time with me and invest, projects in me, which is important for everybody, and that kind of goes vice versa as well sometimes, because you're director and cinematographer, and you got to be able to trust each other and work with each other. And that group was really fun to work with, because it's rare that, like, as a cinematographer like me, and being a part of that type of group, that I can turn around and focus on one thing and know that they got experience, they know what they're doing. I might tweak something later because I'm special, but they still are going to be able to get a job done and help out, and we all work together, and it's nice, and sometimes you don't get that. So yeah, we got lucky.
It's just amazing. Those 2 days were among the most fun I've ever had, like since the beginning of my career, really.
That's awesome to hear.
And it's true because, well, my background is different from yours because I went to school. I went to Emerson College, and I didn't get the hands-on that you probably did at Emerson College. I did in the studio, but not on location. It just happenstance. My
Mm-hmm.
background is mostly cable TV, and the equipment in cable TV is limited. Um, and it was pre-digital days as well.
Yeah,
And I
it's
had to
very specific
relearn.
too.
I had to relearn everything, like when the digital age came about, and you're too young for that.
Yeah,
And
I was lucky to jump in when I did, because it was kind of the start of the, oh hey, we can do things digitally now.
so I want to talk about the specifics of a job, a scene. Let's talk about the scene where Medusa, who was the executive producer on the shoot, it was about her childhood. There was a scene where, as a kid, she gets burned on the hand with an oven, and this was done in a little kitchen that we found that was perfect. It resembled, I guess, where Medusa was a child.
Mm.
And describe who did what in setting that scene up, if you can.
Oh man, well, the cool thing about our group is we already knew what we were doing. We already talked about it. We knew that we needed a force of perspective. We knew that we needed a crush. We needed to have, we needed something specific. And we wanted it to be safe, of course, too, because we're not actually going to burn a child's hand, um, and we talked about it beforehand, and preparation is very important when it comes to these things, because some directors will be like, oh, we'll figure it out when we get there. Can I have that conversation, because you never know what complexities that you're going to run into, or a thought process, things are going to happen that you can't control. And me and Jason just talked about it. We always make the joke, it's a Power Ranger thing, because it's, perspective, and is, so we were able to put the hand higher, of course, on top, because we crushed the scene in a I'm trying to remember what millimeter we used that in. I think it was like a 50. We used a 50 millimeter, and we just, straight down shot, and
Can you
just
describe
focused.
crushing? What's crushing mean?
So, I mean, I use it probably more than a lot of other people, but when I say crushing, it's literally taking something and making it smaller. In this instance, crushing can be used in color terms, but for me, when you crush a frame, it's pretty much using like a zoom lens, or a higher millimeter that is um, more focused. Um, and it forces perspective. It forces, background for foreground. It's used. I love close-up shots like that, like where it's just a tight shot. Macro, some people call it macro. Not This wasn't necessarily macro. Macro is a lot closer, and with a specific lens. But with um, with with the camera, you can kind of change that depth of field, and depth of field is pretty much, well, here, let me show you. See, I can put my
Yeah.
finger up,
Yeah.
and everything back here is blurry,
Sure.
and our eyes are naturally, attuned to a certain, it's automatic. Our brain does things automatically, so when you step outside, it just makes the size smaller.
The camera's
But
a little
but
bit,
we
a few
can
steps behind the brain.
it is, but we have more control over it because it's a camera in our hands, which is great. So we can take you can take the techniques that our bodies naturally do and force it for a different reason. um, so in a way, like this camera did, we can force that blurriness and make it more or less. And with that, we were trying to make it less, but also in a certain area. So so we were able to take like the iris or f-stop, make it very small, so we don't have as much blurriness.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks closer. um, and with, because blur will tell us distance, and not, I mean, it tells us distance. Also, we have two eyes, so we have a different perception. But when you have a flat image, you need that blur to tell distance and how far and how close things are. And you can force that, by zooming in and trying to get as much light on that scene as possible, and then shrinking that down so it's not so blurry. And it's, they use it for, I don't know if I said it, but the Power Ranger thing, they would always go wide, and just, the monsters would stomp on them. It's the same technique, but used with a different lens, just to force perspective to make the hand look like it's closer. Yeah, that's.
How was sound handled in that scene?
um I'm trying to remember. I think, if I remember correctly, it's been a while. It's been a while.
Well, I
But
remember, it probably more vividly because it stands out, because we were in Missouri and I was never in
yeah.
Missouri before.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
remember
yeah,
we used a shotgun mic virtually for everything, even
yeah.
the interview parts.
Mhm.
And that's a question that I had for you guys is, why did we not use lavaliers?
Um, you know what? To be honest, I don't even know if we had lav mics. To be honest,
That's a
100%,
good
like
reason.
being blunt, I don't think we had lavs. Um,
I mean,
I
it didn't
mean,
make any difference. It was amazing. Everything was amazing. The sound
I
quality,
mean,
the lighting.
boom mics are nice. I like boom mics. Lavaliers are nice, but you need when it comes to those, you need someone that really knows what they're doing with audio because you try to hide those things, you get, you know,
The
you get
clothing.
movements and
Uh,
you really need an audio guy when it comes to stuff like that. A lot of people can do it, but when you have someone specifically focused on audio and making sure it's running right and
mhm.
tapes and knows the certain type of the tapes and how to tape it down on someone's shirt or skin, um, it really helps out
Mhm.
for audio. To be honest, I knew that we had a boom mic. We also had it hooked up to a portable audio recorder. And
A
it's not like,
standalone one.
yeah,
Hmm.
but it technically is kind of, I don't know if you would call it a mid-range because it's not really attuned for that specific type of work. It's good. You get good quality, but professionals would look at you and be like, oh, you don't have the right tones. It's not the right type of equipment to use for it because they would use something specifically for vocal tones. They would know the range, they would know the frequency. Like that's just another world that
Right.
people don't think about. Um,
Wait one
and
second. I'm going to get an example. Hold on.
yeah, gotta love the backgrounds.
Was it anything like, and my fake chroma key is going to
Oh,
freak
it's
out on
gonna
me.
yeah.
How about that?
It's definitely it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, we have actually used those before, but it was definitely a different brand.
Hmm.
And I don't know much about. I think that those are for the same general audience. It's for like smaller crews, people that want decent audio that want to bump it up, but
Right.
can't afford the big set. Someone sitting there tuning it the whole time. So
So who was in charge of audio on that shoot?
I we kind of
All did
I
it
think
together.
Jason more because he was able to.
Okay.
And we all we always keep an eye out on like when you're in a smaller group, if it's not someone's specific genre. But I mean, he does really good with audio, you know.
Hmm.
Um, we kind of just keep an eye on it. But when we had takes and stuff, he was in charge. He had the headphones on, listening,
Hmm.
making sure it's going good. So he kind of dual hat that being the director. So
On larger shoots, it's the cinematographer's job and the audio person's job and all the other techies around them to keep the director free to make the directorial decisions, isn't it?
yeah, and like I said, it's just one of those. We had one of those groups where we kind of the way we do things is a little bit different than everyone else. Like I definitely, as a cinematographer, audio, I got a lot to learn still. And a lot of people don't even think about that. Like, yeah, they have an audio engineer, but I mean, you still have to mess with it as a cinematographer. You still got to make sure that how is your audio guy going to sync it? What's the plan? What's that process? And for me, it's always been, I can either sync it because I'm also the editor, so I have a lot more free range when it comes to how I want to do things. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're putting more work on yourself." Well, I mean, I'm more used to the smaller groups, so he recorded on his device. I had a little mic on my camera that picked up audio enough for me to sync it.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, um, and I was definitely focused on making sure framing is still fine. um I mean, you never know what can happen in a shoot. We were at a location where we didn't necessarily have control over electricity. We were using some buildings electricity, and you got to keep an eye out on how lighting is for your scenes and stuff too, because you never know if you don't have control or someone in control of those things. You got to keep an eye on that too. So we kind of just picked our things and just did it, type thing.
Now, as much as you guys planned all this, I remember when it was time for the main interview with Medusa, there was a backdrop with some words on the wall, and you guys lit that amazingly. Did you use gels for that to make a color in the background? Because when you
No,
watch that thing,
those were just LEDs. Those were
those,
just lights at the. So we filmed that interview at a school,
yeah,
um, and I'm pretty sure that those were just LED lights somewhere that we were like, hey, can we use these? And when we set it up, and it turned out really well.
I'm
You know,
really, really surprised that it showed up so well because I've had experiences where, when you have your video lights, uh, it sort of almost drowns all natural light, both, not the sunlight if you were outside, but indoor light is just kind of washed away or drowned out by the video lights. So to have that look real would
yeah, we
just
didn't really
amaze me.
have any indoor lights on. It was literally all the lights that we used were stuff that we placed, that we at least had control of where they were going to be at.
Mm,
So, and if I remember, yeah, because I don't really like, I don't like having any lights that I didn't specifically put somewhere,
mhm,
because you don't just the light in the ceilings. Some person put that in there. I don't know what light it is. I don't know. It could say something on the light bulb that it's a temperature, but you don't know that for sure unless you're going to
right.
test it. And I'm not going to spend the time testing it when I have my own lights that I use. So yeah, we all the lights that we did, and that helps with those problems. People that have to deal with live recordings, like maybe some TV shows that do more live recordings that go out into the community and stuff. And you can definitely tell the difference in
Mm,
what the frames look like, the colors look like, and all that stuff. You can tell that it's more live and not a set. You know, and if you can't, pay attention a little bit. Look at the colors. Look at the camera work. You can tell that if it's a live thing, that there's just things that are just different about it.
Be sure to join me for part 2 of my interview with Quintin Huckaby, cinematographer.